have been a couple of questions actually that expressed concerns about salaries, and I guess people are wondering whether salaries outside of science are equivalent or lower or higher than salaries within science. So perhaps you could speak to that since you've had a range of jobs through different areas.
Yes. Well, let me say first, I would say that salaries inside the federal government were the highest levels in the federal government are lower than the highest levels outside the federal government for academia. But I would say that they are, for a mid-career person, they're fairly competitive with a mid-career person outside the federal government. So I would say that in general, someone going through the career stages until you get to the very highest level in the federal government, it's pretty competitive. For people at a private institution like Embari, it's also fairly competitive with private institutions, and I would say Embari, in terms of just the fact that it's privately funded, has a number of advantages just in terms of the research environment. So that more than offsets any differences in salary level. For salaries in publishing, we try very hard here at Science Magazine to make our salaries for, say, our associate editors and senior editors comparable to what people would be earning with PhDs on the outside. The only thing I'd say is that at the very upper level, they would not be competitive with, say, a very renowned full professor, because there just isn't quite as much room to grow unless you talk about my position, say, as editor-in-chief, in which case it is everywhere, every bit as competitive as the most renowned full professor.
Mm-hmm. Great. Lori, so a couple of comments from you quickly.
Sure, about salary?
Yeah.
I am adequately compensated for my job. So that's one thing you actually could ask when you're doing your informational interviews is, would a starting salary in this position be between X and Y? You can use Glassdoor.com in order to get some information about what starting salaries could possibly be. But in general, I find that these salaries are again, like Marcia said, very competitive. And to me, being happy in my job also is a huge part of my overall compensation package. And I love my job. And so that means a lot to me, even more than sometimes than finances.
Great. Yeah, good point. And I guess there's not the same working all hours of the day and night that you might get as a postdoc.
And interestingly, I work harder now than I ever did as a bench-based scientist. And I never understood when I was a bench scientist why my PI would get up at 4 a.m. to start doing work, because I was never as passionate about the research as she was. Now that I have the job that I do, I'm always thinking about it, and I fully get why she would get up at 4 a.m. That doesn't mean I get up at 4 a.m. But I work harder now, and I work smarter now, and I'm always thinking about it because I absolutely adore what I do. And so that's what I want for everybody on this webinar. I want you to find something that you like to do, that it's not a chore to think about it. And Sean, you and I have talked in the past that, yeah, we might go home at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but that doesn't mean we may not still be thinking about our jobs and thinking about how to make sure that the best information, I'm doing the best job I can. But you work because you love it, less so because that's what is expected 70 hours a week.
Right. So we're actually just a little bit over time, but Anisha, I'm just going to give you the last word to just briefly talk about salaries in your industry.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. Private sector salaries run the gamut depending on what you're doing. And so if you're thinking about switching to the private sector, you can certainly be compensated at the same level or more. What I did want to address real quick, though, is for entry-level people coming straight out of grad school or something of that nature, that is where you might find that non-research career salaries are a little bit less than going into a research career. Entry level in the U.S. government is maybe not as competitive, but again, it gets back to what Lori was saying. You make the switch because you love it and because that's what you want to do.